normally record in here, but since we're ahead of the other class, I'm going to record this. Then in case, Natalie's mind isn't quite here yet because her body walked in so late. She could always get online and watch it again.
Cry about it.
I can use triangle congruence and CPCTC to prove that parts of two congruent triangles are congruent. CPCTC stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent.
I don't like that.
In some books, they make a theorem out of it, and they prove that it's true. That's why they call it a theorem. And so basically, this is just saying that if two triangles are congruent, then all their corresponding parts are congruent. Really important. This note is really important for you to understand. It's important to understand that you must first know that the triangles are congruent before you can apply this rule. This is not a method to prove triangles are congruent. We must first know the triangles are already congruent. And if we don't know that, we have to prove it first, and then we can apply the rule. Copy this down. All right, to answer this question, we first must state why the two triangles are congruent. So if we look at this, let's first of all recap what have we learned so far about proving triangles congruent. What's one method we can use to prove triangles congruent? Angle, side, angle. Let me actually grab a marker, just one of them. Angle, side, angle. What'd you say, Connor?
Angle, angle, side.
Angle, angle, side. Somebody else?
Side, angle, side.
Side, angle, side. Someone else?
Side,
Side, side, side. Those are the four that we've learned so far. We will learn another one, but those are the big four. Okay? The ones we use most of the time. So which one of these allows us to say that these two triangles are congruent? We want to write a statement like, in fact, we can write that first. Give the congruent statement. So that says triangle ABD congruent to triangle CBD. Nice. Was that you, Liberty?
No, Sierra.
Sarah, good. CBD, you have to line them up in proper order, corresponding order. Okay, good job. So now, we've identified the two triangles. Now, which one of these big four over here on the left can we use to apply to prove that those triangles are congruent?
Side,
Side, angle, side. Why?
It's given.
It's given?
Yes.
Kaylee?
well, we have UD, which is congruent to itself.
Ah, something that's not stated there, is it? And to some of you, you might think, well, that's obvious, Mr. Mitchell. I don't need to state that. But we can't allow things to be obvious and not stated. This segment BD is congruent to itself. What says something is congruent to itself? Reflexive property. Okay? And if you think back to the day we first introduced that, I probably said something to the effect of, this seems so obvious, you probably wonder why would you ever use it. The reality is we use it all the time in this chapter when we are proving triangles are congruent. The reflexive property says A is equal to A, or you are equal to yourself. In this case, segment BD is congruent to segment BD. Okay? That's reflexive property. Liberty, you have a question?
So in every triangle that's cut in half like that,
Yep. Every triangle that's cut in half like that, we want to look for that and see if it's important. Sometimes it might be there but not be important. In this case it was. Just like if we see two lines like this, what are these? Vertical angles. What's special about vertical angles? They're always congruent. I don't have to be told that. I have to realize that that's true if it's in the picture. Again, sometimes it's in the picture and it doesn't matter. It's unimportant. Sometimes it's really important. One cue that you can look for, if they didn't label this point, if they didn't put a letter there like A or D or E or G or something, if they don't label that point, then those angles are not important. Because we can't even name them. You understand what I'm saying? If they don't label it, then there's no way to name that angle. So unless they put numbers out here. If they did something like that, then I can label them. But if they don't give me any way to label it, then even though they're vertical angles and they're congruent, they're not important to this situation. Okay? Now this picture right here is not part of our picture we're talking about, so I'm going to erase that again. I just want you to look for those vertical angles just like we do this congruent equal to this segment congruent to itself. Okay? Now, if we identify what we have, they told me this side is congruent to this side, and we said this side is equal to itself. So I'm talking about two sides, right? And these two of the big four, side angle side and side side side, are the only two that have two sides, right? So if we go back over again, if I look at side angle side, then that means I have to choose the angle that's between those two sides. Okay? I have to choose the angle that's between those two sides. I don't know what happened there. Why that drew such a strange line. And so do I have the angle between those two sides? Yeah. In a roundabout way, right? What does that symbol mean right there? Yeah, not really. It really means that it's perpendicular. Now, what does perpendicular mean? It's a right angle. And what does right angle mean? They're 90 degrees, okay? So, in a roundabout way, you're right, but that symbol really means perpendicular. So, that's only important because if we had to write the proof of this, we have to take it from perpendicular to right angles, okay? So we have to make a statement about how we know that's true. But we'll get to that in a minute. That's not important to this question other than I really believe that for you to catch on and get good at these things, I have to continuously talk the right language and I have to continuously keep telling you little things like that. The more you hear it, the better you'll get at it. So I'm going to constantly be doing it. Please don't think I'm nitpicking. And please don't think that I'm just picking on you. I'm not. I want you to continually make statements, and sometimes they're going to be right on, sometimes they're just going to be a little bit off, and sometimes they might be way off. But the only way you'll get this sorted out and understand it is if you aren't the lump sitting in the room, but you're the person participating. Okay? You can't sit in here like a lump and expect this to just soak in. It doesn't work that way. This is confusing stuff. And you really have to get after it. You have to make decisions in your mind, and you have to verbalize it so you can practice saying it correctly. Okay? You can't write it correctly if you can't verbalize it correctly. Okay? So, the first part of the question, state why the two triangles are congruent. Whoever said side angle side, you were right on. Side angle side is why these are congruent.
Is that
Okay.
just proving? You just have to put side and side?
Yep, right now we're not proving this. It just said answer these three questions. State why the two triangles are congruent by side angle side. Write the congruent statement or give the congruent statement. We actually did that first. Triangle ABD congruent to triangle CBD. What if I would have said triangle BDA? Sorry, that's a funny looking D. BDA. What's that congruent to? BDA. BDA would be congruent to BDC. Yep, BDA. So we went along the two lines first, right? BD and then the one line and then the unmarked. So we would do the same thing over here. Two lines, one line, then the unmarked. So that'd be BDC. Okay? Is that making some sense? Okay. Again, it won't make total sense until you actually practice doing it. You probably heard math is not a spectator sport. What we mean by that is you can't just watch me do it and you get good at it. Okay? Very few of us can do that. And I wasn't one of them. I had to practice a lot. Okay, that's that example. Let's move on to this one. 7 through 12. 7 through 12. We're just doing odds today. We're probably going to throw in some evens another day. Just a few of them, not all of them. But we're just going to do some of the odds today, and we'll probably do some of the evens another day. But 7 through 12, I want to make that a little more demanding than what the book's actually asking for. So what I want you to do is to write the proof. So whatever the directions say there, I want us to write the proof. Okay? Again, you're not going to be perfect at this the first time because you've not done hardly any of this proof writing. And you've only seen Mr. J or I do a couple of them for you. So we need to practice more of them. And here's an example. This is like number 12. Okay? So I'm going to pause this so you finish writing this down and then we'll do it. Let's get back. We'll record this and go through this proof. Write the proof. That's the directions for 7 through 12. And again, this problem is very similar to number 12. I gave you the same information. Segment AB is congruent to segment CD, and segment AB, oh, sorry, I forgot my segment symbols. I made these up, I made these up before you came in, so I wouldn't have to do them while you were writing, and then I forgot to do this. Sorry about that. There's segments we're talking about. That's not going to work. Come on. All right. Okay, so when you're writing a proof, two-column proof, first step is almost always just write down what they gave us. And so we're going to rehash what this said. Please don't take the lazy route, draw a circle and an arrow over here. That doesn't work well for you or me. Okay? So write this in. And the reason we know that's true is because it's given. See how I took advantage of that dot that was there. That's the lazy route that's acceptable. Okay? So all I'm doing is rehashing the given. I'm writing it down right there. Did I talk with you yesterday about direct and indirect given? No? Okay, I will today then. Sorry, this being off a day and being gone a couple days in certain classes due to meetings has really messed me up on what I told who.
You didn't really have us yesterday.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did. Well, you did.
right. What's your question, Liberty?
Wait, so we're not working on this tomorrow?
No, tomorrow I'm going to show you what's important in lesson 5. And then Friday, we're probably just going to have time to work on things, and I might add a couple more problems, but it's not going to be a lot. And then, realistically, Monday I will give you some kind of review exercise, okay, that we'll work on together. And then, depending on how that goes, then we might take our quiz on Tuesday. Okay? And we might move on Tuesday. So anyway, we want to prove that these two segments are congruent. And so what I like to do is, after I draw this picture on my paper, not in my book, I like to mark what I want to prove with a little question mark. That helps me know where I want to go, helps me keep in focus in what I want to accomplish, okay? And because you haven't done any of these, I'm just going to tell you right up front, we first have to prove the triangles are congruent, okay? In the directions that they gave you for 7 through 12, they said write a plan for the proof. I think it's more confusing sometimes to write a plan than it is just to do the proof. And since I want us to have more practice actually writing a proof, so some of you will get really good at it, then I'm going to take this opportunity to actually practice writing proofs here. So we have to first prove that this triangle is congruent to this triangle. Okay? We want to prove the red triangle is congruent to the green triangle. So somewhere we want to write the statement that triangle ABD is congruent to triangle, can you help me out in the order? ABD CDB, that was nice and loud. Who said that? Okay, good. Did I also hear a CBD? Okay, let's look at it. We start at A, the angle that's out here all by itself, and most all of you would confirm that C would match up with that, right? And then we went along the side we knew. Do you agree? To get to B? So if I do that from C, I go along the side I know, the next letter is D. So if I go here, the next letter is D. So CDB is the correct way of saying that. Okay? Again, it's not a gigantic problem if you mix that up, but we really want to get in the habit of saying things in corresponding order. Okay? And so I'm just going to, please don't take it like I'm nitpicking. I'm just constantly going to remind you the right way of doing it. Doesn't mean I'm going to take a bunch of points off if you don't do it that way. A lot of times I won't take any off. Okay? But I still want you to hear it the right way every time. Okay? If I say something wrong, I come back and correct it. I don't just leave it wrong so you can think about it the wrong way all the time. You right, Jessica? Okay. So, I want to prove those two triangles are congruent. And so I look at this information here. It says that two segments are congruent. They're already marked right here. These two segments are congruent. Okay? And so I call that direct information because it directly leads to one of these four things. Remember? Side, angle, side, 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 angle, side, angle, and angle, angle, side. Remember the big four we just talked about? Okay? This directly leads to one of these two things. It's a side, so it's one of these. I didn't have to choose the middle one there. It still could be any of these, right? So then we go to the rest of the given, and it talks about lines are parallel. Well, the fact that lines are parallel is important, but it doesn't say that an angle is equal to an angle. It doesn't say a segment is equal to a segment. So I call that indirect information. It's that roundabout, like when we were talking about those lines being perpendicular, it indirectly leads to the fact that they're right angles, and then that says they're equal, but it doesn't tell us directly that they're equal. And that's what this is. So we go back and we say, what does it mean if these two lines are parallel? And along with those parallel lines, we have this transversal, which I'll move. So we have the two green parallel lines and we have that transversal. And what did I tell you we always need to think about when we see parallel lines and transversal? Louder? Remember the three rules we learned about parallel lines and a transversal? Actually, lesson 3.1 and 3.2, we worked on both of them back in chapter 3. Whenever we see two parallel lines and a transversal.
I don't like the interior or the exterior.
Okay, what about interior? Inside the parallel lines, but what goes with it?
Interior angles.
Not just interior angles. There's more to it than that. Alternate interior angles, that is, so we need to consider alternate interior angles. And then what else, what other kind of interior angles were there?
Same side.
Same side interior angles. And then we had another one that doesn't say, sorry, I got distracted. It doesn't say that, it doesn't talk about exterior angles, but what does it say? We had two about interior and one that doesn't say anything about interior or exterior. Corresponding angles. Remember, they mean same position, right? So if I just quickly drew a picture over here, if I get a marker. This angle and this angle are corresponding because they're both the top right angle in that intersection, correct? Gavin, do you agree with that? Okay? So since they're both in the same position, the top right corner, they're corresponding. That's not going to happen in this scenario because nothing outside my parallel lines is part of that original black figure that I had there to begin with, right? All of that picture is in between. So we're either talking about alternate interior or same side interior. Can someone remind me what same side interior angles says? What's special about them? They're on the same side of the transversal. They're inside, but what's special about them? Yeah, they add up to 180. Well, do any of these statements here talk about angles adding up to 180? No. What do they talk about? Angles being congruent. So the fact that they add up to 180 doesn't help me. What do alternate interior angles do? No. They are equal to each other, right? If the lines are parallel. So by them telling me that these two lines are parallel, that means that these alternate interior angles are going to be congruent. Okay? Now, I didn't want to lead you or let you be led down the wrong road, so I just showed you which pair of alternate interior angles there were. Some of you might want to look at these, and I caution you there because notice the other side of this angle is this line, and the other side of this angle is this line, and we don't know anything about those two lines, do we? Did they tell me anywhere here that they were parallel? No, so those would be the alternate interior angles between these two lines here. Okay? And that means then we don't know anything about them. So what I did in yellow here is not going to be helpful. So let's see if I can move that out of there. Okay? So that part's not helpful. So we're just going to stick with these green ones right here. Okay? Because they're sandwiched between this green line here and this green line here, and they're opposite sides of this transversal. And so how do I name this angle down here? This angle here. How do I name that angle? You can't be afraid to be wrong.
Half of angle.
I can't call it angle D because there's too much going on there for one letter.
Angle DBC.
Angle DBC. So if I trace that, I'm going to use yellow again because it stands out. If I trace what you said D, B, C. Is that the angle we're looking at? No. So let's try it again.
DCB.
CBD, CDB. Is that what I heard over here?
We said the opposite.
You said BDC. Okay, that works too. You said BDC. And that's exactly the same as what you said, Connor. CBD. And so that either way is good. So let's go ahead and write that set to angle CDB, angle CBD. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. I traced correctly. CDB. There we go. Okay? Now what is that going to be congruent to?
Angle ABD.
Louder, Liberty? ADB. That's wrong. You don't agree with yourself?
Oh wait,
ABD.
Trace it.
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So you said A what?
A, B, well, I think I said,
What do you want to say now?
I said D instead of B, but it should be B instead.
So say it all again for me.
A, B, D.
ABD. So you're saying, I'll go black. ABD. Okay, and that's this angle here, right? And so I agree that those are congruent. Angle ABD. Okay? Now here's the tough question. What kind of angles were they?
Alternate interior.
So how do I know they're congruent?
Because the alternate interior angles theorem.
Exactly. Nice job, Mason. The alternate interior angle theorem, which is what you were saying, since the line, Connor was saying, since the lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. So, since it has a name, since that theorem has a name, Alex, the alternate interior angles theorem, we can just write that name down. We don't have to state what it says. Okay? Since it has a name, just write it down. All right? Now, how many facts do we have there that talk about sides or angles being congruent? How many facts do we have here that talk about sides or angles being congruent?
2.
Okay, this one says two angles are congruent, right?
Yep.
This one says two
Theorem.
sides are congruent. This one says lines are parallel. That's not one of them, is it?
So
we
the
have-
all?
No, we write it down. I'm just saying, we're looking for these three facts here. Or these three here. Or these three here. Or these three here. And none of those facts care whether lines are parallel. They simply say, if these two angles are equal to these two angles, this side's equal to this side, or if these two sides are equal to these two sides, this angle's equal to this angle. Okay, that's what these are talking about. These over here. Okay? And so we need a third fact, and it's not in the given, so we go back to the picture. Did you hear that? I don't mean to say it slightly. Just a minute. If the information, if you don't get three facts from the given, then you have to go back to the picture and look carefully at the picture. Let me slide it back down. Look carefully at the picture. Oh, sorry. Went the wrong way. I went down. And see, is there anything else? I'm going to clean this up. Is everybody not okay with that? Go back to the picture. Is there anything in the picture that's true just because it's drawn that way in the picture? It's got to be true.
Triangle.
Go ahead.
Could you do angle C is congruent to
Angle C is congruent to angle A. Okay. This is where it does get tricky, and we have to be careful. They told us to prove this was congruent, right? So we know that these two triangles are congruent. They're not saying if it's not possible, right, not possible. They're saying write the proof, right? So we know they're congruent. If they're congruent, that means all parts are congruent. But the question we have to get through is there information directly in the picture that says that has to be true? And though they certainly look the same, we don't have marks like that on those angles, do we? And nowhere in here were we told that they were equal to each other, so we can't just go by looks, okay? So no, we can't say those two angles are equal. Michael?
The line DB is congruent to DB.
The line DB is in both pictures, isn't it? It's in the top left triangle and the bottom right triangle. So it's exactly the same in both, okay? So I'm going to say this is equal to itself. Now, I'm going to say it just a little differently. You notice when I wrote here, DB, it went D then B, right? And so over here, it went B then D. So when I do this, I'm just going to switch these around because that's the way they match up in the picture. Okay?
So if we don't flip them around on our test, we didn't.
No. But I still want you to try to do those things right. I'm not going to hammer you for that. That's tiny, tiny stuff. And I'm trying to get you to see the big, big picture. Okay? I'm not going to mark you wrong on that just because they're out of order. But I am always going to say it correctly and point it out the right way. Okay? And that's what I was trying to say before. Why do we know it's equal to itself? Reflexive property. I'm too quick for this computer today. Let me slow it down for it. Reflexive property. Okay? Now, as I look at this, how many facts do I have now?
3.
3.
Now we
And they are 2 segments and an angle, right? So we have to check. 2 segments and an angle is that one.
Yep.
So the question is, oops, I erased all my stuff, and I should have left those 2 marks up there. Where's my angle in relationship to my 2 sides? It is, isn't it? In the bottom triangle, I have this side and the angle in between. In the top triangle, I have this side and the angle in between them. Okay? So that is definitely side angle side. And so I put here triangle. And I'm just going to cheat and use this order right here because I already took time to do that. I'm going to say triangle CDB congruent to triangle ABD. And why do we say? Side angle side. Okay? And then there's one more step. Now that I know these triangles are congruent, I know all corresponding parts are congruent. Okay? Now that I know the triangles are congruent, then all corresponding parts are congruent. So I can go back to where I erased my question marks. Are those corresponding sides? Yes, they are. So I can say then that segment AD is congruent to segment CB. Segment AD is congruent to segment CB. Right? Yeah. By what rule? What rule are we studying today? We lost sight of it and all the other stuff we did. There you go. CP, CT, C. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay? Now that's a lot. No doubt. I'm not expecting perfection. Just today it's all about effort. Really try hard to sort through it, write it down, and you're going to make mistakes. and raise your hand, I'll come around and try to help you sort it out. And your biggest struggle is to not get frustrated with me and the problem, okay? And understand that there's gonna be a process of getting some wrong before you get them right. And that's why I've told you, I don't have a date for your test yet. I might have a calendar set up, but I don't have a date, not up here in my head. The date is not to be determined yet because I don't see us being ready yet. And until I see us being ready, we're not moving on to the test, okay? So you have to work hard so that I see you still working, and then we'll wait until you're ready, okay? Your assignment today, 1 through 17 odd, that's 9 problems. And then number 18 is the 10th problem. So you have 10 homework questions to work on. I know you only have 14 minutes, but work on them the best you can. And then understand Friday you'll have more time.